All right. Welcome, Pratt Foundation students. My name is Carl Fengler. I'm the Associate Director at the Center for Career and Professional Development. And I am so excited to have this opportunity to tell you about our program, to introduce you to myself and my wonderful colleague, Kenzie, who's going to introduce herself in a moment. And then also do a really fun exercise for you. We're thinking of you as we're all going through this. We want you to know that the services that we're going to talk about at the beginning, which our center does, which will help you for the next 4 years and even after that. Presently, even in this situation, a lot of these things we're doing virtually. So hopefully this will be of immediate use to you and also eventual use as we go down the line. And I sure look forward to meeting you in person. And so with that, I'm going to let my colleague start walking through some of the services that the Career Center gives you.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Mackenzie Adrians. I'm the Assistant Director of Experiential Learning in the Center for Career and Professional Development. And so what I'm going to do now is actually share my screen with you so we can get started today. And like Carl said, we're going to start to talk about some of our services. We're also going to talk about a fun activity that you can do during this time that will allow you to have some self-exploration as well. And so those are both of our names. We just introduced ourselves. And then to discuss career development and just some of the things that we can help you with, not only now, but in the future. Because one of the benefits of our office, the CCPD, is that we are with you for life. So even as a future alumni of Pratt Institute, we'll be able to help you. You can come back and see us or video chat us, kind of like we're doing now. So one of the most basic and one of the most important services that we help with is resume and cover letter reviews. So for most of you, at some point, you might be applying for a job or for an internship or have an application for a grant or a leadership position, and you'll need a resume. Resume will just be a snapshot of your experiences. We can also help with cover letters, which help you add some narrative to those experiences and connect with employers as well. Portfolio reviews, especially for some of you in certain majors, are going to be really important for you in the future and potentially right now. We have counselors that can help you with your portfolio and your website and help you decide and prioritize some of those projects that you've been working on. Mock interviews are great. I know Carl really enjoys mock interviews too. Those practice interviews where we can actually create an authentic, a genuine experience as if you're interviewing with the company of your dreams. And we can ask you questions that would be relevant to those types of interviews. And today we're going to focus on the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which is a career assessment. I also help in our office with Clifton Strengths, which is another assessment that focuses on positive psychology and the things that we already do really well in our life. And I also help with, we all help with internship advising, whether you're looking for an internship or you're in an internship now, or you'd like to do an internship someday with a company and get some great experience under your belt. We have a great deal of career events throughout the year. I know this year is a little bit different because most of our events will happen online rather than face-to-face, but actually we're face-to-face right now. So it's just a little bit different, a different way of approaching things, but we absolutely have networking events and ways that you can connect with employers and people that you'd want to work for in the future. And then Carl's going to talk about our next offering.
Yes, wonderful events. And also, I'm so excited to talk about Ignition Lab because that is the big entrepreneurship program at Pratt. It is one where if you have an idea or you want to know what it's like to run your own business, this is a 7-month program where you actually get to develop your problem statement, like what is it that you're actually solving and who are you doing it for, and then you'll learn things like your target market, and you'll learn how to monetize it. And that's a big thing that students have, is students are so creative and wonderful coming up with these ideas, but then it can be very complicated and layered to then figure out how to monetize it, how to develop this, how to prototype, and all of those things. And we bring in experts that are entrepreneurs from all over New York that serve as mentors and focus on different aspects of that business. So if you're interested in that, check out Ignition Lab. It's open to undergrad, grad, and alumni. So
Mhm.
that's Ignition Lab.
Yeah.
And then there's mindfulness programming, and both Kenzie and I are very involved in this. And it's especially important right now to take care of our mental health and helps creativity. And so we have something called the Meditation Incubator. That's both an online program, and when we're back to normal, it will also be an in-person option that we'll be sending out to you guys. So look for it, Meditation Incubator. And there's one in the Brooklyn campus that Rhonda, the executive director of the Career Center, runs. And then I run a section in Pratt, Manhattan. And we might have people like Kenzie also leading these sessions in the future. And it's a group meditation where it just teaches you different techniques to improve your own meditation, to feel better, and it gets amazing feedback. Like something like 99% of all the participants, over 500 people, said that it helped improve their quality of life. So check out the Meditation Incubator. And then Kenzie, what about the Day of Mindfulness and those other great things?
Oh, yeah. Oops, I'm sorry. So the Day of Mindfulness is an opportunity for, sorry, Pratt students, Pratt faculty, and Pratt staff to all come together and practice mindfulness. And as Carl was mentioning, we have a lot of different offerings when it comes to mindfulness. It can be rooted in meditation, but that doesn't mean that's the only aspect of mindfulness. And so one of the things that's been really eye-opening for me in being introduced to mindfulness is that mindfulness might be a gratitude practice. It might be journaling. It might be singing or movement. And so the Day of Mindfulness happens on a semesterly basis, and we'll keep you updated about those types of offerings moving forward as well. And then the CCPD blog is one of the things I also wanted to share with you all today. And so I'm going to share my screen once more here and show you our blog site. So the first thing you're going to see is actually our ccpd.pratt.edu, and you'll see our lovely office here. You'll see our warm office, which we miss so much. And there are a lot of different resources that we have up here. So I know Carl mentioned our Ignition Lab. We have our Meditation Incubator, which we've also mentioned in Mindful Pratt. Right now, something that will be super important for you all, since we're working virtually, are these virtual services FAQs. And so we've worked really hard to try to answer some of the frequently asked questions that we've gotten from students and alumni during this time. And especially when it comes to appointments, we are still fully functioning as an office. We still meet with students every single day via Google Hangouts or via phone. And so these questions will hopefully give you some more information about some things that you might be wondering about, or some things that are constantly evolving just during this time.
And Kenzie, can I show them the resources page?
Yeah, absolutely. And so
If you guys see the resources tab and you click on the career guides,
yeah, absolutely.
then you see that if you especially foundation students, you guys are going to be looking at the internship soon, or maybe a professional job, a survival job, all sorts of different things. You're going to want to have a competitive resume. So we have templates. So you can see that we have a resume guide and also a cover letter writing guide. And these things have everything from keywords, so those really wonderful specific verbs that describe like what you're actually doing in the bullet points, which are the transferable skills section.
Yeah.
And the best part is you can just look at these templates that we have, and so that you have an idea that you're on the right page. Then you can make an appointment with one of us to have a career counseling session where we can go over it together, and we can make sure that it's really up to snuff and just like knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
Also for cover letter writing as well,
Yeah.
same thing. We have all sorts of examples.
Yeah. It's really helpful. I mean, I still use these today, even though you and I see resumes and cover letters every single day. It's still nice to see examples and know that we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. And I think that can be really helpful for you all as students as well.
That's such a great point because when people come in to do a cover letter, I know a lot of people, it's painful. It's even painful for me. Like it's much easier, to be very honest, full disclosure on this recorded session. I love writing other people's cover letters and it's quite easy for me, but when I write my own, it's still very painful. I have to
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We'd
admit.
love to help you with any of these things and anything more that you might have questions about that we might be able to help with that we don't have listed here. Just let us know. You can reach out anytime. One of the big things that I want to mention too is that we have a website for jobs and internships, and it's called Handshake. So you may have heard of that. That's also on the website or the blog that I just showed. And not only is that the place where you can find jobs and internships, but it's also the place where you can make an appointment with one of us. So I think that if you're questioning any of these things or you need additional assistance with any of these, just let us know and reach out to us via Handshake.
And the final thing is with
Yeah.
Handshake is it's also called Pratt Pro. So a
Yeah.
lot of people get confused about that. They're like, is it Pratt Pro or Handshake? It's both. Handshake is just the company.
Yeah.
Pratt Pro, so you go to prattpro.com and you can actually make an appointment or make an account that way.
Yes. All right.
Woo!
Carl, we ready to move on to Myers-Briggs?
Ready.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
All right, so this is the fun exercise that we have for you guys. So by the end of this exercise, guys, hopefully you learned all the great stuff that we have to offer. And now we're going to do a self-awareness thing with you guys. You're going to be able to describe what the Myers-Briggs type indicator, the MBTI, is. You're going to be able to describe your own characteristics and have an understanding of them.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to explain the differences between your type and other people, so maybe you can have more self-awareness. And this is not labeling you. This is just helpful. And if you don't like it, no problem. Maybe it's not for you, but we find it usually helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a lot of fun, even just to talk about what makes us unique. So I think that'll be the fun part of it too.
Yeah, and I love this slide. This is basically, what you see might be different than what someone else sees, or even how you feel inside might not be how you're presenting. So anytime we have tools that are tried and true for decades, like the MBTI, usually it's a wonderful way to at least have a conversation with a professional career counselor about like maybe why you might be getting tired or why you might feel invigorated under certain circumstances, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All right, and just basically how people are wired differently. And usually when there's conflicts at work or misunderstandings, a lot of it's not by intention. It's almost never about intention. It's because one person is trying to do something. You're both trying to do something productive, but you're going about in different ways, and it could be frustrating. So this can help sort that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So what is the Myers-Briggs type indicator? I think the first point that's important to recognize is that it's self-reported. So you are answering questions based on your own self-awareness and what you're feeling and thinking that day. I know that we can feel different on different days. And so that's just something to go in knowing is that you're responding to these questions. Carl mentioned it's not supposed to be a tool that's judgmental or inherently trying to place people into boxes. It's really, as a well-researched instrument over many, many years, more than 40 years, I think probably more than 50 at this point, and used internationally. It's supposed to be a tool that's focused on preferences and understanding naturally, innately, where our preferences lie. And so if at any point you're feeling like, they're putting me in a box, they're giving me a type, please understand that it's with positive intent for understanding. That's really the purpose behind it. Yeah. And so some of these also hit on some of the points that we just made. Preferences are inborn. So one of the exercises definitely to demonstrate this point that I often do with students is have students write their name with their dominant hand, something that you do every single day probably. And then I switch it and have them write their name with their non-dominant hand. And what we recognize when we do that is it's not impossible. You can write your name, you can write your signature, but we have natural preferences. And so if at any point you're questioning that, think about that dominant hand exercise. Environment enhances or impedes expression of type. One of the things that Carl will get into with the different types is that, especially when it comes to professional work environments, oftentimes we have preferences. We have maybe we gain energy by being around people. Maybe we gain energy and re-energize by being by ourselves. Sometimes that enhances or impedes that expression that we have. We all have all of these types. We are all of these. It's just on a sliding scale. And so we'll see how clear your preference is. And all types are equally valuable. There's no right. I'm not right as an extrovert. Carl's not wrong as a persuasive person. So just keep that in mind as well. Awesome. And we'll continue. Okay, and some of those benefits, and Carl, feel free to, if you see any of these you agree with too, but self-awareness, we've mentioned this a couple of times. We hope that especially during this time as we're working virtually, that this will be fun for you, but also helpful, especially in articulating maybe some of the strengths that you have and some of your preferences in the workplace. Start to identify behavior trends within yourself and perhaps other people as well. Maybe both positive and the less desirable outcomes. And then also we want to tie it together for both personal and professional development. Perfect. Okay. All right, so we're actually going to have you take the assessment now. So it's a free assessment. You don't have to pay any money, and it takes less than usually 8 to 10 minutes, Carl, usually?
Yeah, about 10 minutes. Yep.
Perfect. So you're going to visit 16personalities.com. You can open up a browser right now. And what you're going to do is take the assessment. You can sign up for an account. You don't have to. It's free. Try to answer the questions as best you can. Don't spend a lot of time thinking about it or trying to choose the right answer. There is no the right answer. There's no wrong answer. And if you have to choose the middle option, kind of the, I forget what they call it in there, kind of the I can't choose either side option, try your best to choose one on either side, just because your clarity of preference will be clearer. And make sure you write down or screenshot your results before Xing out of anything, and notice those percentages as well. And then we'll talk through it, right, Carl?
Yep, it sounds great. All right, so relax, don't overthink it, and just think about what comes naturally. Because sometimes the final thing I'll say is that if you have a job where you're constantly having to be organized, but in your off time, you're like, I just like to go with the flow, do what you would do in the off time. That's the last piece of advice if you're kind of stuck.
All right, so make sure you pause this video, and we will see you in a second. Yay. All right, everybody, hope it went well. And so we're gonna kind of resume our slideshow here and get that going as well. And Carl's gonna talk you through some of his results.
All right, welcome back. And I think it's awesome that you did this and that you're growing by engaging in this process. And if you don't agree with it, it's totally cool. And hopefully this will be fun for us. So I'm sharing with you guys my results. And, it's funny, these results are different in some ways than I am at work. So that's why I kind of threw out that part at the beginning. But I'm an ENFP. We're going to ask you actually to not worry about the final letter, the T or I forgot what the other one is, because that's actually not Myers-Briggs. That's an additional, a fifth metric.
The A or the T.
Yeah. It's, there it is. It's the A or the T. Thank you. It says it right there. It's the identity measure. That's something that the 16 personalities kind of added so that and you can maybe, find some use for that, but that's not based in the same sort of rigorous science that the other 4 measures that we were trained in do. Okay. So anyways, I'm going to talk more about this, but I just wanted to share with you mine and kind of point out that I'm pretty decently extroverted and I'm really on the intuitive. And so whenever I see a big skew like that, where it's like 90, I think I've actually probably a little bit more balanced now, I hope. But that one is not that any judgment. Hey, it means you're very, it's fine. But that's something to pay attention to when you see something that's way to that extreme because it means you're probably really good at certain things, but it also
Mhm.
means you probably have real areas for growth. And I know that when I did the Myers-Briggs, just seeing that made me realize I got to work on my attention to detail. And
Yeah.
if I'm having conflicts or if people are getting annoyed with me at work, it's probably because they have a stronger, version than I do, and that's something that I can take ownership and work on. So that's how it's helpful in the workforce, right? And then a lot of the other ones I have right in the middle, so those are going to be less, extreme.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let's start with the four measures. So the first one is mind, and that's where do you focus your attention? Where do you get your energy? And this is really straightforward. So extroversion does not mean that you're socially graceful. Introversion is you're socially you're shy and awkward at all. In fact, what's interesting is a lot of research says that the best leaders are more on the introverted side because
Mhm.
they're able to be more nuanced. And I said that scoring as as an extrovert, right? But they're more nuanced and usually reflective. However, there's no right or wrong. I just wanted to throw that out there that that it's really about where you get your energy. So if you find that when you're alone, then you start getting tired and you like to go to other offices to kind of chat with people, you're probably more on the extroverted side. And if you find that after you can meet with people, but then you might just feel really tired and you need to read a book or go for a walk, you might be on the more introverted side. And a lot of us are both.
Yeah.
Technically, I think I'm an amnivert, so it's kind of like an extroverted introvert, but that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I don't know about you all, but I heard these terms growing up, like, "Oh, you're so social, so you're so extroverted." And so I think exactly what you said. It's so important to clarify that introverted doesn't mean shy and extroverted doesn't mean outgoing. It's completely the energy piece. I think that's really helpful.
Excellent. All right. And then next is, and so these are just, we'll just zoom through
Yeah.
these, but this is
Sorry
kind
about
of
that.
just covered. Yeah, we can even just skip that. We kind of already went outwardly focused, inwardly
Yeah.
focused. If you
Yeah,
guys
so if you want to, yeah, find out more information, you can always pause it and kind of assess for yourself, like where your preferences might lie. I'll do that.
excellent. Great. And so the next one is energy. And this one's a little bit more complicated, where this is about how do you take in information, right? And so the one is sensing, which is much more concrete, much more detail oriented. And so it's like, okay, let's figure out how to do this, what's the nuts and bolts of it. And on the other end, you have the people that are really great with the big picture, seeing the forest, but not always seeing the trees, and stuff like that. But this is where you have the visionaries from. So, and usually, we all have both of these things, but we're always going to have a preference and sometimes a skewed preference. And
Mhm.
so there's benefits to both of them. Here are some of the traits. So we're figuring this out as we're doing it, Kenzie. I
Yeah.
love it. That's a great adjustment you just made on the fly. But
Yeah.
anyway, so you can see that a lot of the things are intuitive, are really emphasize the theoretical, what's possible, whereas a sensing person might be like, all right, let's stick with what's practical, what's concrete, what's going on. And so
Yeah.
you can see how if you're having disagreements, a lot of it is not because you
Mhm.
just don't get along, you don't, you otherwise you're just never going to like each other. It's because you're speaking different languages. And so
Yeah.
this is when I learned this, and I had a boss who was a strong S and I was a strong I, we actually had this wonderful conversation where I said, it would be so helpful if you explained to me the context of why I'm doing this task, where he thought being an S, that would be extraneous, distracting information. So that was a real breakthrough using this.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's interesting, Carl, that we have different preferences in this category too. So I tend to be a little bit more sensing. I like the concrete in the here and now, and so working with someone who's so strong and intuitive in that end, we have challenges, but it's also that balance that we always talk about too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to say for the record that it's actually a gift to work with someone who helps complement you
Oh yeah.
because if you just, a lot of people have the instinct to hire people that are similar to who they are, and that's actually a huge mistake. And so one of the best things you can do, and I'm so thankful I have colleagues like Kenzie, because we really help each other out, and like we become like this super team when we're working together. And then we also can teach each other how to grow in the areas that might not be an inherently strong for us.
Absolutely. Awesome. Oops. And then present and future.
Okay, and then there's thinking versus feeling, and this is again the stereotype that we want to avoid is that thinking is cold and logical and feeling is oversensitive. So those are how you can negatively stereotype and simplify this, kind of the extrovert introvert kind of stereotyping that we mentioned earlier. And instead, it's just about, are you focused on, the objectives, or are you focused on the feeling, like, are you just sticking to the facts, or are you focusing more on like how what's happening is impacting, the relationship? You're striving for harmony versus you're striving for objective truth. So we all have both of these things. Again, we can't say it again. You're not one or the other. It's just you're always going to have a preference, right? You could be the most logical, talented lawyer in the world and be an F, and you could be this incredible humanitarian, empathetic person who's a T, right? It's just, and again, this is usually I'd say the most misunderstood of them. And so if you have a question, let's say you're not sure if you're a T or an F, look at the other three measures and then read the description for those three measures with the T and those three measures with the F, and that will give you a clue about which one you most likely are. And again, you might not be any of them, right? But usually people find this helpful.
Yeah,
saying that.
Yeah, awesome. Perfect. Last but not least.
Okay, and then finally, judgment versus perceiving. And basically this, a fun trick that we have for this is like when you plan a vacation, do you like to know what you're doing and color code it? Or do you just kind of go, see what happens and just make sure that you've got the basics covered, but then a lot of room to play around? And to be honest with you, this is the one which I'm the most in the middle and switch off with. And I think it's probably, though, to be very honest, I'm probably a P at heart, but because of my job, right, and especially as the more job experience and the more responsibility you get, jobs gear you towards, and Kenzie's always saying this, she's really knowledgeable about this, always gear you towards the J. And so I start to think that I'm a J, because at work, I just live off spreadsheets. I color coordinate things. And I started doing it in my vacation planning even. But I still think if I was left to my own devices and not so influenced by work, I would be a P.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. When I'm talking about this one, I usually ask people, like, what does your closet look like?
That's great.
I think that can also reveal a lot about a person when it comes to what they're focused on, if they're systematic, if they're organizing their clothes by season, or if they're like, oh, I don't even have a closet, my clothes are just everywhere. That's just one example. But when I look at these descriptions, I'm very clearly J. I'm very clearly plan oriented, but I love surprises. So it's not an all or nothing type of thing. I know we keep saying that, but so these are just some of the characteristics of both sides, which I think are fun. And so Carl mentioned this actually in the last one, when we're thinking of different ways that we can see this demonstrated in everyday life. One of the activities we like to do in person is actually put together people that have different types and have them do some travel planning. And I think that this can be super interesting if you can even think about how you've planned trips in the past, whether it's with family or friends or partners or anything like that. What are the types of things that you do when it comes to travel planning? For me, my first thing is I make a spreadsheet and I put the place where I'm going, I put my flight information, I put the finance information, I do a budget spreadsheet, I color coordinate things, and pretty much everything is planned out. Carl, how would you plan a trip?
Honestly, I do the exact same thing you just said. So that's why it does get a little confusing, but it's still helpful because I do all those things. But then when I get there, I like to just kind of so I like to create a structure that I feel safe being
Mhm.
spontaneous in, if that makes sense. And that's why I'm very just barely a P, as
Yeah.
opposed to if I was a strong P, then I wouldn't be into the color coordination. So I think that's interesting for people to know. If those of you were listening to Kenzie and Kenzie said, I'm a strong J and I do all this, well, I'm a P and I do everything that Kenzie just said. So I want to validate you.
Yeah, exactly. Just those clarity of preferences, but maybe even talking to someone, maybe you have that friend who's like, I'm going to go on a vacation next week and they don't do any planning and they barely have a hotel room picked out or whatever, a place to stay. Maybe they're very clearly P. I don't know. It might be fun to ask someone in your family about that, just to see, or maybe your roommate or a friend of yours too. And this is an interesting figure here. So I think, Carl, I think you found this chart, but it tells you how common or what percentage of the population, I think in America specifically for this
Yeah, I
one.
think this is specifically for Americans.
Yeah, although this is used internationally as an instrument. For this one, it's um, how the population, how common your type is within the population. And mine is one of the most popular types. I have 10%. And then Carl, where does your fall? I'm an ESFJ. Where does yours fall in there?
I mean, 6%. So I think what's interesting is only about a quarter of the population are N's. And so that's
Yeah.
why if you're any type of N, you're just going to have less. And that's why more people are concrete. So if, sometimes if you're having miscommunications, that's something that's really helped me is when I realize that. And I'm like, oh, I can kind of anticipate that about 2/3 of or 3/4 of people might be like, all right, why are you going off on all of these different directions? So I can now not judge myself and think there's something weird about me and just be like, oh yeah, we just have different ways of process and we can adapt.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting to see. It's even interesting to see the breakdown by identified gender too. So you can look into this and find a lot of information if you want to dig any deeper into the Myers-Briggs, definitely. And so how does this help you, Carl? How does the Myers-Briggs, how has it helped you?
I mean, we've been talking about it the whole time, but basically it's for you, for one, to read the description. In 16 Personalities is wonderful because I was just coaching actually a student on using the Myers-Briggs who was really excited about it.
Mm,
And so I'll share some fresh with this. There's a strengths and a weaknesses part, which you can read, was for me really illuminating because like, oh my God, that is, and it can get kind of horoscopy and that's okay, right? And, like we're all super unique, so it's not going to nail it, but
yeah.
it's definitely helpful. And I was incredibly surprised at how insightful it was, the
Mm,
strengths and the weaknesses. And there's a job section to make it very specific to like what types of jobs might energize you. So for
yeah.
instance, I know that if I were just left alone in a job and I didn't have any room for creativity or interpersonal interaction, I would be really drained at the end of the day. I might even be able to be good at doing it, like if I
Yeah.
was good at math or something, but it would still drain me. And so those are the kind of things we talk about with students is, why they might be drained at the end of the day, even though they're making, decent money and
Mhm.
they're even talented at it, right? It's not just about your aptitude because this is not an aptitude test. It's about what energizes you and why that might be. And also the communication piece for me, like I gave the example of the boss that was an S and I was an N. Having that awareness of the differences made me more compassionate and less prone to be like, why don't you get it? And instead
Yeah.
being, oh, this could be where the disconnect is. And it helps me try and figure out how to bridge that disconnect.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think as this image shows, working with other people and the teamwork, the collaboration piece is so valuable. I know we've touched on it with you and I in our office, but to work with people who have other preferences and other strengths can only help. Yeah, and
So
so
again, this
yeah,
relates to career. We just talked about it, so we won't say it again, but
yeah,
it's extreme. Self-awareness helps you interview better, helps you relate to people better, and helps you work on yourself, both leveraging your strengths and also growing the areas that you want to improve. And at the end, it's about human connections, right? So
yeah,
shout
yeah,
out to
and I think, I mean, as we're relating this back to career as well, um, I think these assessments can be really helpful in providing you with language. And so we talked about one of the services we help with is interviewing and practice interviewing. And so if you're, in a job and you're asking questions about like, well, how does your team work with other people? Or how do your teams collaborate? Maybe that's really important to you as an extrovert. Or what does the team do outside of the everyday workday? Maybe that's something you really value. And so thinking back to your type or your Myers-Briggs type can be helpful in making sure that you're going to grow and thrive in different environments too.
Great. And
Yeah.
then what is this slide? This slide is about, it's also helpful to understand why you might be frustrated. We touched on
Yeah.
this. So like if you're someone who's extroverted and intuitive, then you could get really frustrated if you're at a job that doesn't allow that interaction or that creativity and so forth. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then the final thing I want to say, guys, is that if you do
Oh,
this test
we'll come back.
and you're not satisfied with it, just like in psychology, it can be really useful to figure out what did the test get wrong, right? Like how, and then that's something to explore and about yourself and to use it as a tool to even say like, why do you think it got it so wrong? And
Yeah.
that could be a piece. So I think this can be a useful tool, even if it doesn't nail exactly who you are, to just, have talking points, to just get a deeper understanding of people.
Yeah. Yeah, at the very, very least, on 16 Personalities, it's always fun to see who your TV characters or movie characters are, or famous people. I don't know, it's just fun to connect and relate to those types of things sometimes too. So even if that's all you take from it, I hope you take more, but that's a fun thing you can do too. Yeah.
Great. So we hope this was useful. And if you made it all the way to the end, we'd
Yeah.
love to hear about it. Let us know, because that would make our day. That would literally be amazing, because the only reason we're doing this is because we want to help you guys. We want to connect with you because we can't meet you in person, and we can't
Yeah.
wait until we can meet you in person. So for now, we hope this was fun. We hope this was informative, and we would actually love to hear from you. My email is F as in Frank, ENGLER @pratt.edu. Shoot me an email if you want to discuss anything, and be happy to work with you.
Yeah, thank you all so much. And as we mentioned in the beginning, like if you want to make an appointment or if you have questions about anything, in addition to emailing us, you can always visit us on handshake-Pratt Pro, so prattpro.com. So thank you all so much.
Bye, everybody.